Welcome back to the channel. We're going to continue working on our 2020 Honda CRV. Last time we got everything pulled, we got our inner piece up there and just tacked it up. So now we're going to pull the door off and weld it all up and then fit our outer piece and get that welded up. Let's get started. If you're playing the at-home door removal drinking game, I'm not responsible for the alcohol poisoning. I'm going to scribe the lines where I need to cut this outer piece. I took the piece I took off of the car originally and just clamped it up in the same spot. So now I'm just scribing that line on there, and that's where I'm going to cut it. And I did cut this thing so that I could put that pillar in all the way up to the roof if I had to. But when I got this piece off, I saw that I could just get away with changing that little piece on the bottom, and now we can cut it right here. So we're just going to cut right on our scribe line. I'm going to start cutting across the top, and then I'll work my way down the sides. That way the die grinding disc has less of a chance of getting pinched in there if I just cut straight through each side. This actually isn't the top, it's just the top of the way it's sitting. It's actually the outside. Now we can cut our edges. We'll hold that piece a little bit so it doesn't end up on the floor and doesn't pinch the disc mostly. In the pile. Now we can cut the seam on the front edge. I chose to go a little bit further than where I had cut it previously. Found a better spot. It was centered in between the two holes in there and missed all of our spot welds. And there are quite a few spot welds on here. I'm not going to throw that in the pile. We're going to need it for a backing. Now we're going to clean up our cut a little bit. There's just some burrs in there from where we cut the piece apart. Just lightly drag the grinding disc over the edge of it, and that should knock them all off of there. And a nice clean edge to weld on. Now we'll remove a little bit of our paint. That's enough. We'll procrastinate and move the rest of the paint later. We need to unbolt this little mud flap here. Just 2 screws in there. And now we can start grinding out some more spot welds for our dog leg here. Now we're just going to trim this piece off so I have a smaller piece to work with. Now we can separate our spot welds using our makeshift breaker and our incorrect hammer, of course. In order to be able to see all of our spot welds across the bottom here, we need to get this undercoating out of here. It's actually pretty friendly. It's really soft and comes right off. So we're just going to scrape our way across. It pretty much just peels right off the flat areas and then stays in the spot weld holes. So it kind of highlights them for you. You could actually probably grind right through it, but you get a lot of smoke that way, so it doesn't take that long to scrape it all off. And we're just doing enough where we can see the spot welds. Apparently I'm going for a good housekeeping award here. Make sure it's nice and clean before it goes in the pile. Well, now we can see our spot welds. We'll go ahead and grind them all out of there. You can see Mr. Spotty climbed his way out of the pile. He's putting in a lot of time on this build. Wonder what he needs money for. And our piece is ready to come out. Let's pry it out. See how many we can get to break loose. And of course, no gloves. I couldn't get the die grinder all the way into the corner, so we'll just use our breaker as a manually operated air chisel and knock that little piece out of there and get rid of the rest of this. Bye, Mr. Spotty. Now comes the tedious and boring task of cleaning all of our areas that we're going to weld to. We're going to clean all of our seams and all of our spot welds to get any contaminants out of there so we get a nice strong weld. Just cleaning all the paint off and flattening out the weld if there happens to be any little pieces left over, so that we have a nice flat surface to weld to. That's enough for the car side. We'll do the other piece in a minute. First, we need to straighten out this dog leg a little bit. Our wheelhouse is pushed in a little bit, so I'm going to put a clamp on there. This is pushed in from where the door went into it. Now that we have our clamp on there, we can insert our Scott powered metal bendy stick, and we'll put it up against a piece of wood so we don't mar the face of the wheel. And we're just going to pry out on it and hammer away at the little bend that's in there and straighten it all out. And just work our way around. As you pull and stress relieve it, everything straightens out like it should. We can pull our clamp off of there. I could have done this with the actual ram, but it would have been more work. Came out real easy. We're just going to go ahead and hammer and dolly the rest of it to get it nice and flat. I threw our new outer skin up there for a couple of reasons. One, I can check and make sure that that wheelhouse is out where it's supposed to be, and it is. And now we're going to scribe our lines where we're going to need to make our cuts. This one back here, I'm going to overlap it. So I'm just going to scribe the line just so I know where that piece ends. And I need to remember to cut a little bit lower than that. This spot up in the front, I'm going to scribe the line, and I'm going to cut right on that line. Hopefully I remember that. I have a tendency to always cut on the line. The dog leg is the only part I might have a problem with. We'll unclamp our piece and unbolt it. Now we can cut that front edge. We're going to cut right on the line for this one. It's easier than trying to measure it. If you can just set the old piece over it, mark it one time, you're done. I mean, we could take measurements with tape or whatever. But this method is a little bit more precise and a lot faster, so I use it whenever I can. Give the last little bit of this a twist to get it out of there since I didn't manage to cut all the way through it. And we'll head to the back. Now this is the part where we don't want to cut the line. The line is where the other piece is going to end, and since we're overlapping it, we just want to make sure that we're below that line. And give us about an inch of overlap. And the two edges, we got to be careful we don't cut through the panels underneath. Grind out our spot welds. And I chose this location because right underneath it is a little piece of foam, so I want to be above the foam and above the damage that was done to the outside, so we don't have to straighten it. And file. Now we can start cleaning up all of our spot welds and clean up our seam where we're going to weld to. And now we're ready to start cleaning up all the spot welds on our piece that we're going to put on. I really need to find myself a panel prepping gnome. I really don't like this part, but it needs to be done. And it probably takes longer than actually drilling a spot weld or welding. But if you skip this step, you get some really bad welds. We'll flip it over and do the same thing on the other side. Make sure you clean up both sides. Clean up our seams. There's a lot of spot welds on Hondas. And now we're going to put our weld through primer on all of our bare metal mating surfaces, only on the bare metal. We don't want it everywhere. You don't have to do the outside, just the part that gets sandwiched together. Missed a spot. So we got everything prepped and ready to go. We ground everything down, we put our weld through primer on. I primed the spots where the paint was messed up, either from me or the accident or both. So
we don't have to worry about any rust getting in there. Put my backing in here and in here. We're going to overlap the back over there, so we don't need a backing. Everything should be in the right spot. We don't need to test fit it because nothing's going to change by putting that panel on other than the distance of our back door in and out. And if you remember, our back door is a little too far in, so by putting this piece in here, should bring it out right where it belongs. That's my theory anyway. So we're going to go ahead and put our glue on around our hinges, put our foam in here, and throw our piece up and start welding. So let's do that.
So we'll start with the forbidden icing. We want to put this on before the foam because this gives us about 90 minutes of working time. The foam gives us about 15. So if we put the foam on first, it's going to start expanding and be dry before we get done with this. And this takes a little while. First we have to apply it and then brush it all out. We want to make sure we cover up any bare metal. It has to stick to bare metal. It's okay if you get it on the primer part. It's just not going to do its job there. But as long as there's bare metal where it was bare metal before, there's more than enough to hold it on. So, and if you miss any of that bare metal, that's a place for rust to start. So we want to make sure we get it all. Now we're going to put our icing on the car side. Make our little figure eights. Just got off my shift at the cake decorating school. We can brush it all out. Make sure there's no bare metal exposed anywhere in there. And now we can start putting our foam in. Some at the bottom of the B-pillar and some on the dog leg. We didn't clean our old foam off. This will stick to what's there. So we took some of it out, but it'll attach itself. Move our blanket before that ends up as part of our car. And slide our piece up. We get one shot at this, otherwise it gets messy. We're going to put our bolts in for our hinges. That's going to hold it in. We want to tighten it up and leave those in there until the glue is completely cured. So we're going to get it all lined up. We'll start there. There is a little bit of movement right and left, or forward and backward, I guess. We'll tighten it down and start clamping it up. And now that we've used every clamp that we had in our toolbox that we haven't already lost yet, we can start welding. The more clamps the better, because otherwise you got to stop like we have and move the clamps around and then continue welding. So if you got a bunch of clamps, you clamp it all up and keep going. You don't have to stop. Every once in a while we got to stop and move our clamps. Controlled burn.
We have our outer panel all welded up. The grinding gnome came in here and ground everything down for us. Now I'm going to pull the front door off so our bodywork gnome can come in and do the bodywork on all those areas. Then we'll edge it out and throw it back together. Actually, after the bodywork's done, we'll prime it. I'll put the hinges on, then we'll paint it, and then we'll put it all back together. Because that's an extra time to take the door off. I love taking doors off. Hold this. So we'll just have a little body work at that seam. A little bit at that seam. And then at that seam. And around the door striker. Maybe a couple of little spots there where the welds show. Just to finish them off so you can't see them at all. And I think we're going to have the PDR guy remove that buckle up there. About 80% of it came out from pulling it. Kind of gives me the idea that maybe I pulled it in the right spot. So the PDR guy can take care of that. We won't have to paint anything up there. It's also another dent. So maybe you can take care of both those. So until the guys get here and do their work, I'm gonna call it a day. And once upon a time, I used to do all that body work and paint work and everything. I did the whole rebuild start to finish. But I really didn't enjoy that kind of work. So now I have guys that do. It kind of works out for everybody. They like the work and can use the extra money, and I don't and have other things to do. So I'm gonna go do those other things. So all of our body work is done. So now we're gonna throw the doors back up here, get them all lined up, and take them back off again, but we're gonna leave the hinges on the next time. So we won't have to adjust them the next time we put them back on. We don't have to tear down our rear door because it's the right color, so we don't have to edge it out, but we're gonna have to strip down our front door so we can edge that. And then when they paint all this, we'll throw it back up and hopefully it all lines back up. So let's get our doors on. We'll scuff underneath the hinges even though Honda didn't paint under them. I want to. Nobody ever paints under them. It's not just Honda. We don't have to scuff under this because we're going to be taking this back off. Just put it up here so I can latch the door. Honda puts a little seam sealer in here, so we're going to do the same thing. That one's going to make a mess.
We're going to put our original 12-point bolts in here because hopefully, if everything goes right, this is the last time we're putting these bolts in. There was some bare metal that they didn't prime underneath those hinges, so we're just going to use a little spray can primer. That's all I'm allowed to use anymore. As soon as that dries, scuff it up and put our seam sealer on here. Now the reason I go ahead and scuff it before I put the hinges on is it's a lot easier to scuff a flat surface than after we put the hinges on and we're trying to get in the little corners and crevices. So it's easier just to scuff it ahead of time. So that's what I do. Not to mention, we're going to have seam sealer all over the place.
Today's episode has been brought to you by the number 8. I just closed my wrench and ratchet inside the car. You know I did.
Yes, I briefly considered opening the door that's barely hanging on by some loose bolts. Luckily, I had a moment of clarity and decided to go in the back door that's securely fastened to the vehicle. Now we gotta latch the front door. Need to go forward a little bit. Our gap doesn't look too bad. Now we gotta go back a little bit. Should be good. We'll tighten it up there. Our doors are completely bolted up in their final resting place. Our gaps are looking pretty good. I hope so. Too late to move them now. We glued the doors on. Front gap is even all the way up and down. Our door is got the right depth on the rear door. They open and close like they should. So now it's time to take them off again. This time we're going to leave the hinges on and just unbolt them from the door. Since those bolts are self-aligning, when we go to throw them back up, it should go right back where it is right now, without any effort. This way we can paint the hinges and everything just like the factory did on the vehicle. We'll unbolt our front door. We'll just set all the bolts on our convenient Continental shelf and probably lose them. Unlatch it. And we'll go set it off on a stand so we can take it apart later. We need to pull our quarter glass out of here. It has a little damage on the chrome molding around the outside, so we have to replace it. We did get one with our used quarter, so that's what we're going to put on. Cut all of our urethane out of there, but there's a couple of little clips that hold it in before the urethane dries. We just have to get those out of there. We'll save the clip, not sure why. It's supposed to be attached to the window, but it's not anymore. Save the other one at the bottom, and the top one at the top came out like it was supposed to with the window. And we can pull our strikers out of here, because if I don't, there is a small chance that they might just get painted over. So we'll take the time and take them out of there, because sometimes painters suffer from the "it's not my job" syndrome. This way, all he has to do is prep it and paint it. No extra work for him. Now we can start stripping our door apart. Pull out our rubber baby buggy bumpers. I did have a few comments in the previous videos that mistakenly thought that I prefer working on Hondas because they happen to get the B-pillar right. And the truth is, it was very easy to work on and made my life a whole lot easier. But no manufacturer gets everything right. And in this door, Honda got it wrong. To be fair, not every manufacturer gets everything wrong, unless it's a Ford. But as you guys know, even Ford gets something right every once in a while. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So back to our door. I pulled out our speaker so I can reach in there and release our clips on the back of our wiring harness, in case we need to save it. Spoiler alert, it's different than our original door, so we're not going to need it anyway. But I still want to save the clips in case we need them. We can pull our door handle off. There's 2 screws that hold it in. Pop our little clips off that we're holding on the trim panel up in the front. Disconnect our lock actuator. And we can unbolt the bolts from the regulator and the window track that we can see. Pull our window sweep out of here. One more wiring harness clip that we can get to. All right, we put it off long enough. Let the fun begin. That is the gooeyest of gooey fun stuff. It's not butyl tape. I don't know what it is. It's like sticky never sees. It gets everywhere. It's really soft and it makes a mess. So we peeled our water barrier back and both the rest of our regulator. But there's some studs on it, so we can't get it out of the door. We're going to fight with our water barrier a little bit more. But they decided to run the wiring harness through for no apparent reason, other than to make my life miserable. And yes, that sticky black stuff is getting on everything. The wiring harness, the door, the glass, the weather stripping, and me. Just to name a few. Now we're going to unbolt our glass from our window regulator. Since we didn't have any power, we couldn't lower it down. We just get a ratcheting wrench in there and loosen up the bolts. Now we're going to get rid of this gooey fun stuff that's now stuck to everything. I just found a dull razor blade and we're just going to scrape it off of there. You can see it's on my arm over the door. You can be sure the engineer that came up with that stuff got a promotion after the guy that made my life easy got fired. Meanwhile, at the same time, Acura's, which is just another Honda, had the good stuff. It comes right off, nice and easy to work with, and doesn't make a mess. Why could they use it on one car and not on the other? I guess that's why you pay more for an Acura. We could use a scraper for this, but then we'd have to clean the scraper. We're just going to toss our dull razor blade out, and I'll probably find it again and use it to cut something. See, this stuff's all over my fingers. And we have to get it all out of there so we can paint this thing on top of it. Once we scrape most of it out of there, you could take some wax and grease remover and just start wiping it all down. It dissolves real easy with wax and grease remover, but if you don't take the majority of it out, it just turns into a black puddly mess. I ended up just pouring wax and grease remover on it and letting it soak in and then wiping it off. That was the fastest way. Should have left all this stuff for the painting gnome so he could thoroughly enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, rant over. Now we got rid of all of our gooey fun stuff, and working on this door is not quite so bad anymore. We're going to pull the wiring harness out of here. Weasel it out of there. We might need some plugs, so we're not going to toss it just yet. I'll pull the gasket off the front. Just a bunch of push pins that hold it in. And it clips into the molding at the bottom. Now we can reach inside the door and release the little tabs to get our door gasket off of there. And before we can get access to the little tabs on the back of our door gasket here, we need to remove the door latch because it's in our way. We'll just pull the 3 bolts out of it. And slide it off of the lock that's on the inside. And slide it out of there. We can pull our regulator off. And slide our glass down. Tip it forward and slide it out of there. And now we can continue on with our door gasket. We are going to need it, and I don't want to take it off the other door, so we're just going to take our time and save all these clips. It goes on a lot easier than it comes off. Now we can remove our outside door handle and the cap in the back, which is also our door lock. Just pull back and twist it out of there, and we'll pull our gasket out. And slide the back of the door handle out of there. We can pull our window channel out of here. Just tucks in there. So we get down to the track at the bottom, and it just slides into a tab. We can slide that out of the opening of the door. And put that in a pile. We'll unclip our belt molding. Be careful not to break these tabs. They're not very friendly, so we'll just reach in there and disengage them one at a time. And we saved them all. Now we need to take that lower molding off. We can see most of the clips, so we'll just disengage them from the inside. To get them out of there, you just push on the tab on each side and hold out on the molding a little bit so they pop out of there. We'll get most of them. The ones in the back we can't get off of there. And the bottom of it is two-sided taped on, so we'll break that two-sided tape off of there and just twist the molding off the last few clips that we couldn't get to. Make sure we're not going to break it. Two-sided tape wasn't really doing a whole lot. So now we'll take our clips out of here. We could release the tabs, or I could figure it out and just twist them and they fall right out. There we go. Now I'll put them back in the molding so that the molding is ready to go in the garbage. Because our moldings are different, because ours is a Touring and these moldings came off of an EXL.
So the CRV is in the paint room. We're waiting on the painting gnome for him to paint our door and our pillar. As soon as that's done, we can throw it all back together so we can paint the outside. Until then, I'm left waiting. So that'll be the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you after the painting gnome's been here.